So today we are going to take a look at a striker who was probably considered to be one of the best around during the early to mid 2000s. And as you guys can of course see on your screen, that is Adriano. This is a man who would go on to make 48 appearances for the Brazil national team, scoring 27 goals. And along the way, he also won the Confederations Cup in 2005 and the Copa America. This was an absolutely lethal striker during his heyday and was definitely, especially for about 2 to 3 years, was definitely feared in and around Europe. It all started for Adriano back in 1999 when he was a part of the Flamengo youth squad. He was then promoted to the senior squad a year later, and after that he was then moved on to Inter Milan, even though he had actually signed a 2-year contract with Flamengo. Of course, Inter Milan and other clubs circling teams such as PSG at the time were looking at the young Brazilian, but it was Inter Milan who were able to get him in for an undisclosed fee of around 13 million euros. Adriano was then loaned to Fiorentina for the 2001-2002 season, after which a 2-year co-ownership deal, yes, one of those weird deals that they do in Serie A, was then struck up with Parma, and a fee of 8.8 million euros was agreed. That deal was only agreed in order to acquire Fabio Cannavaro, which also included another half of Matteo Ferrari for 5.7 million. Whilst at Parma, he would then form a formidable partnership with another young striker that you guys will probably remember from the mid 2000s, and that is Adrian Mutu. He would go on to score 23 goals in all competitions for Parma, which then would earn him a move back to Inter Milan in January of 2004 for about 23 million euros. Now, when he's moved back to Inter Milan, I would say that this is the kind of period which really birthed, the emperor, as they like to call him, Adriano, because, in that first, season back at Milan, in all competitions, he played 18 games and scored 12 goals. The next season, he would go on in the 04-05 season to play 42 games and score 28 goals. The season after that, he would then go on to play 47 games and score 19 goals in all competitions. This was a man who was really starting to, light up Europe. And again, as I mentioned before, this is a guy who had everybody feared. He was popping up in games. I think most of us will, of course, well, the older lot, should I say, will definitely remember Pro Evolution Soccer 6, where Adriano was an absolute cheat code. Alongside Samuel Eto'o, left foot and right foot, I promise you right now, for anybody who didn't play the game, during that period of time, go back. If you like your football games, this is when football games were at its absolute peak. Forget FIFA nowadays, Ultimate Team. I promise you that is whack in comparison to what we have seen, from Pro Evolution Soccer, and especially Pro Evolution Soccer 6 with Adriano. That game was mesmeric. It's bringing back memories to me right now. And, this video is supposed to be about Adriano, the footballer, but that game in itself was absolutely brilliant. And, he was the face of it. He was someone, as I said at the start, at the period of time, he was an absolute superstar. He was one of the best strikers in world football. During his time at Inter Milan, again, he was working with the likes of Jose Mourinho, at that period of time. Jose Mourinho, of course, one of the best managers of our generation, in a general sense. He was then playing, with players such as, Ibrahimovic, Zanetti. This was a very good Inter Milan squad. But, the death of his father, back in 2004, really took a toll. And according to Javier Zanetti, this is what really was the downfall, shall we say, or the fall off of Adriano, because I just feel that, listening to what the people have said and you see how his career kind of panned out after that, you can tell that this was the beginning of the end, for the Emperor. He started picking up injuries during this period of time. And again, you can see just in regards to, I would say after the 05-06 season, which was probably his last good season in European football, that's where you're starting to see the goals get less and less and less. But again, injuries, loss of form, just not really being at it. And of course, listen, you lose a loved one, it's going to hit everybody differently. That's not something that is just easy to just brush over. And unfortunately for Adriano, that was kind of really the kind of end, in terms of his stardom in European football. Obviously, during this period of time, after a few years after his father's obviously passed away, there have been a few instances, in terms of, due to poor performances, his work ethic, he's out partying at nightclubs, he just weren't taking it as seriously as he was before. And I think that was always the worrying thing, for someone like Adriano, at that period of time, especially because, especially when you're at such an illustrious football club, one of the biggest clubs in the world in Inter Milan, and things are just not really working out for you, it's going to be easy for you to maybe fall to things that, is there, the temptation of the partying, the drugs, and, etc., etc. And especially, during that period of time, for a Brazilian, we've seen it, with the likes of, Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Robinho, all of these kind of Brazilian players, out there in Europe. But I do believe that with someone like Adriano, it just seemed like it was destined to just not work out, for him in the end. So, of course, in 2007, he was then loaned out to Sao Paulo. He arrived there, poor physical condition, still battling, depression, alcoholism, at this period of time. Then he did make a little stint back in Italy with Roma. That was only for one season. Didn't really work out for him there, and then he moved back to Brazil, where he kind of just saw out his playing career. Didn't really play too many games, if I'm being totally honest with you. During the latter part of his career, I'd say from 2011 till about 2014-15, he didn't really play too much football, and then he ended his career at Miami United. Which is actually pretty wild, the fact that this is a player who was, touted for big things, to end your career, at Miami United, when the reality is he only played, give or take just about 20 odd games in like the last 5 years, of his career, which, that's not great. That's really not great for someone like, an Adriano. You definitely expect a lot more. So therein lies the short story of Adriano Ribeiro, the Emperor, as we love to call him. Of course, we will remember his time at Inter Milan. Yes, it was a short time, but he was one of the best strikers, out there. He was listed in Ballon d'Or top 10 lists, for a couple of seasons. He was listed in, best player of the year awards and stuff like that. So let's not forget, let's not look back at Adriano's time in football, in a negative light. I still want to say, this is one of the best strikers that I've ever seen, in football. And I really, really wish that he was able to just go on and kick on, from there, because I believe he could have been one of the greatest strikers of the Brazilian history. And I believe he could have been one of the greatest strikers, in world football, if he was able to continue on. Guys, please make sure you do smash that like. Please make sure you do share and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys on the next story. Stay tuned. Peace.